guys, actually, I'm going to make those last two videos, part one and will be part three. I really wanted to do this yesterday, the day before, whatever day it was, to follow those last two videos, but we didn't have any reception at the house that we were at, so I couldn't. So let me see if I could do this. So this is part three. So I left off, and it was, first day was like drowning in the ocean with no balance at all. Bad day. Second day, rebalanced and eventually made it to Tallahassee. But in the process, I drove with David, and David was taking small roads, a lot of small towns, and that really, it took us a lot longer to do it that way, but it actually worked to my advantage. So this is basically what happened. So day one, David gets there, and David is been living in Georgia. So when he got there, I was able to ground to Georgia and get some. I was still drowning, but at least I had balance. Like, think of it like that. The reference of day one, I was drowning in the ocean, flip-flopping around all over the place. Okay? So day two, David gets there, and David is from Georgia, so I was able to find Georgia vibrations enough that I could kind of stabilize myself underwater. That's where I was drowning in day one. Okay, you with me? Okay, so now I'm underwater, still drowning, but at least I've got balance. I'm going to use this analogy through this to try to explain what happened. Okay, so the next morning, I'm balanced, still drowning, still don't like Georgia, not one little bit, but at least I'm not flip-flopping around in the ocean drowning, I'm just drowning. So I get up and I walk outside, and it is a beautiful morning, beautiful morning. I think this was Thursday, if I think that's right. You know, giant lawnmowers mowing the side of the highway. And so I smelled cut grass, and I love the smell of cut grass. Again, happier. We go around the corner, and we stop to get gas. And I cannot remember the name that was on the side of that gas station, but it was like, I'll have to ask David what it was. But it was like, it was an inspirational word name instead of like Shell or Mobil. It was some inspirational word that I'd never seen that kind of gas station before. And it made me smile. We got gas, again, happier. We drive down, continue to drive down the road, and I start noticing these really big rows and rows of magnolia trees. And as you guys know, huge tree fan here. So I went, okay, magnolia trees, happier. Went further down the road, and there's these big, huge pecan groves. Again, happier. Keep driving down the road even further. There's a giant dairy to the right. And we haven't even gone very far here, guys. It's so much happier and happier is revving up. And this dairy is a big dairy, old school dairy. These cows are huge and fat and happy, and they're being milked, and it's a wonderful, good vibration. I'm going happier. Keep driving down the road. Now, I was in high school in Kansas. Kansas has very good farmers, very good farmers. And I started watching for these fields. They're beautiful farmed fields. Hi, Michelle. Hello, She Green. And so, okay, I'll get back to it. Hi, guys. And so Georgia, She Green, Georgia vibrations, I have had trouble with Georgia vibrations from the get-go. And earlier, what I said was it felt like two very distinct sides boiling over, and it could explode at any second. Now, this will make sense later. This is the feelings that I've gotten in Georgia and Atlanta since the reptilians moved the production of movies and stuff to Atlanta. Atlanta was even worse. It was like worse. When I was up, you know, in the first of the year, oh, it was really, really, really bad. I was in a bus, and it woke me up. It woke me up whenever I went over the border. I knew when something had changed when we got over the border. But I wasn't really familiar with the vibrations. It just felt bad, and like things could blow up at any second. Really, really bad. I didn't care for it at all. So, and Atlanta was the worst of all. And things went to crap on my first trip up north in Atlanta. because of those vibrations. So I've tried to avoid it or get through it as soon as possible. Well, on this trip, I had to drive the whole bloody state up and down. So, of course, me being me, and I can't do anything simply, I simply set this up so that I would deal with these vibrations. Because visiting all you guys and not going through Georgia is a real pain. So I know why I did it, to deal with it. So anyway, we're driving and I'm looking at the fields and I'm appreciating the land. And in the fields, I connect to these farmers that are farming these fields, and that connected me to the people. And the people is what I was avoiding, because the people are what had the really, really off vibration. But when I went to the farms and then the land and then to the people, then I had to connect. And I went, wait a minute, stop here. So I started tracking that vibration backwards. And again, now, as I'm getting happier and happier, think of it, I'm swimming, I'm starting to swim instead of drown. I'm balanced and I'm swimming and I'm getting higher and higher and I'm getting closer to the surface of the ocean. Now, keep in mind that part one, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to walk on water. And this is how day one started. I'm drowning and I'm flipping around. But what I'm trying to do is walk on water. Keep that in mind in this analogy. So as I get happier and happier, I'm going higher and higher to the surface. Now I get to the point where my head's above surface and now I can breathe. So I breathe and I'm balancing. I'm not walking on water yet, but I'm not drowning and I'm balanced. So I started looking around and I'm like going, what is this? And I start looking and I realized that She Green, in case you didn't know, the stuff from LA, you should talk to Seth, because he's the one that told me this, that the production has been moved from LA to Atlanta because Georgia gave them a whole bunch of tax cuts. So now a lot of the production is now, that was in LA, is now in Atlanta. That's why the vibration is so different there. Anyway, back to the point. So now my head's above water. I'm looking around. I got the vibrations. Now I kind of got my feet under me. I'm not so freaky. So I can take a look at these vibrations and kind of figure them out. So I start looking, and I've told you guys this before, but just in case you don't remember, there are consciousnesses in your body, in your cells, in your body, in your family, in your towns, in your states, in your countries, in your planets, in the universes, blah, 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 on and on. So what I'm looking for here is I was looking for the vibration of the state, because some states, the borders are not accurate as far as the vibration goes. But when it comes to Georgia, border to border, that consciousness is absolutely to the border of Georgia, almost all the way around. The only exception I would say would be the northwest corner. But other than that, it's almost border to border. That's where Georgia, the state of Georgia's consciousness, is actually bordered. Now, one of the things I talked to you about with David was that I noticed when I was scanning Georgia, when I got my feet under me with the Georgia vibrations, talking to him, that there are mass unmarked graves, not just Native Americans, but Civil War people in Georgia that I don't think anybody knows about. But there's a lot of unmarked mass graves in Georgia, which I've not seen anywhere else. I haven't scanned anywhere else, but then why would I? This isn't exactly something I would do. But I did notice it when I was just talking to David. So now I'm back and I'm going, okay, so I connected the land to the people and got a really good vibe. But of course, I will always do that because I love Gaia. So I went from Gaia to the people, instead of the people to Gaia this time. Went down to the state. And what I found was this incredible, I mean, absolutely incredibly powerful attachment by the people in Georgia to the land, to the physical land itself. Very, very powerfully strong. Now, the rest of this will make sense, so hang with me here. So I was able to connect with that. Well, instantly, of course, I was comfortable and happier with that right there. And they're not only attached to the land itself, but the animals that they raise on the land and animals that they hunted. They have a deep, abiding, it's not even just love, it's a love, attachment, respect, very Native American-ish, only lots stronger. So I went, well, that's interesting. Where did that come from? So I started tracking that backwards. And what I found was when people came to Georgia, they did pick up a lot of that from the Native Americans. And they built on it. They built on it. Now, at the same time, I realized that I could talk to the consciousness of the state of Georgia, which I've never talked to a consciousness of a state or a nation, or I have planets and I have universes, but never states. So I realized that I could do that, and that helped a lot. It was very hard to understand because it was, well, it was just a level of energy that I wasn't familiar with, let's put it that way. So it took me a while, which is why, by the way, by which is why, by the way, I don't even know what I was saying. I was reading what She Green was saying. I don't know what I was saying. Anyway, back to the point at hand. So anyway, I was talking to the consciousness of the state. Now I wasn't understanding it very well, but I was getting a vague understanding. And the more I, kind of looked around or questioned and listened to the knowing, the better I got at this understanding. So long story short, and it was a lot more complex than what I'm going to say, because it went on for 6 hours, and you guys know how long how fast I am. So I'm just going to give you the high points to make it simple. But basically what happened was the state of Georgia decided that it was going to really investigate the aspects of war or fighting, the aspects of pain and fear and anger that was associated with that kind of activity. Now, in order to ground before that happened, they also matched that with the humans having all humans, all races, all colors, all creeds, whatever, having a deep, abiding commitment and love and respect for the land. And that is really what fueled most of the fighting and the wars. So, where it started with the Native Americans, and then it was the Civil War, and then it was the British American War, and then it was the Civil War, and then it was the Civil Rights Movement, and then it was women's lib, and there's been a lot more since then. They just got a lot smaller. But Georgia itself has stayed in investigating and experiencing as a collective in very, very minute detail from many, many different perspectives that experience of war or fighting. That's the reason why I was so bloody uncomfortable with it, because that is a very low vibration, and they have broke it down to very, very specific details. So not only do I not like violence at all based on my history, I avoid it massively, but I really, really didn't want to feel all of that particular aspect. So when I understood that that was their decision, that was their choice, that was what they had decided to do, that was their creation, and the beings that were involved were all a part of that, then all of those vibrations in Georgia made sense to me. And the absolute love that the people have for the land trumped all of the feelings that I was having about all of the vibrations that were in that state, because of their really, really investigating and taking on and including the vibrations of war. Do you see? Does that make sense? So in that moment, whenever I saw the game that they were playing, and I understood the game that they were playing, and then tracked it back to their higher feelings of love for the land, which is love for Gaia, then I fell in love with it. It was just like whoosh, it all went transformed, and I fell in love with Georgia in that moment. It just happened instantly. And the point in all this is what you consider 3D and 4D is a fractaling down off of a higher grid that is really in between 4 and 5D. But everything is connected, and I talk about grids when it's actually waves of energy that there's no difference between. But I use 3 and 4 and 5 because I have to, because y'all are in linear time space and I have to talk like that. But the point is that when I go deep enough, if I'm having something that I'm uncomfortable with, if I will just hang tight, even if it's really difficult, which if y'all watched number one video, know how difficult it was because I was unable to cover that one up at all, and I didn't try. I wanted you guys to know how difficult, how much pain I was in. So when you have that emotion as you're getting to 5D, or if you're trying to get to 5D, then what you do is you breathe through it, you keep going, you take a breath, you try to get balanced, and you keep going, because if you keep going, there is always a higher grid feeding, a defractaled grid that is feeding the fractals down below it. And if you keep going up, you'll find one that you're comfortable with, that you can sit in, and in that moment you can attach to that, like I did, their love of the land. And I could sit there and I could look at the rest of their game and understand it, and be able to be there with it and be able to accept it as being okay. So in all that process, I went from my head being above the water to I just raised and raised and raised till by the time I took a deep breath and fell in love with Georgia and the people here and respected the game that they were playing and that they had created, by then I was running on water. I was still about ankle deep in water because I'm never going to enjoy those vibrations of war, anger, fear, hatred that they have created here. But when you look at it from a higher grid, a higher place, out of non-judgment, then what you see is you see the game. Now, if you get stuck in the game like I was, really unknowing, not knowing what was going on, that was part one. And if G-Man, if you watch this, if I haven't done it yet, but could you put those 3 videos, part 1, part 2, and part 3? Because they'll make more sense to people. Like one title, part 1, part 2, part 3. And, or put them all together in a separate video. I don't know. Do something. He's really good at that production stuff and doing it the right way. But the point here is that no matter what your struggle is, the process that I went through with Georgia is exactly the same process that I go through if somebody cuts me off in traffic. It's just easier with cutting me off in traffic than it was in Georgia. But it's the same process, and it's the same process you guys will use. Now, I showed you and told you how I worked it out and how it works for me. You can use that to find your own way that it's going to work, but ultimately, you're going to have your own unique way of dealing with and raising up to that higher grid that feeds those lower fractals. And when you understand that the higher grid or the higher vibration is what's giving energy to those fractally lower vibrations, then you can't be mad at the lower vibrations anymore, because the lower vibrations are being fed by the energy of the higher vibrations, just like you are attached to source energy from all the way down here. Everything's connected. Okay? Well, that was a couple days later than what I wanted to do, so I hope I got it through as well as what I would have liked to have done in the moment. I try to get it done as quickly as I can after it happens so I can share as much information as I can. But yeah, that's that. That's part 3. Update, I am in Tallahassee waiting for Daniel to show up. I'm going to say hi to him again. Then tomorrow morning I'm going to run up to David. I got David's meet up with David, and we're going to drive like caravan style back up to G-Man so David can meet G-Man and see him for a few days. And then, I don't know, on the 7th of September, we'll head up to Washington. So that's your basic update on that. Alrighty then. So, yeah, that's the end of that. I love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.